Today we're talking about protein.
Welcome to The Curious Consumer. I'm Nate Rosen.
I'm Jenna Mosovitz.
And we're here to talk about all things consumer brands, CPG, consumer packaged goods. If people don't know what that means,
Yes.
people are curious. People are curious about protein.
So curious about protein.
It's clearly taken over in the year of our Lord 2025.
The year of our Lord 2025. Yeah, like, should we just get straight into it?
We should get into why everybody's talking about protein.
Okay, I think so too. So this year of our Lord 2025, protein has taken center stage like I would say more than it has ever before.
I think so, really has.
Not in the sense that like we're eating more meat or anything. It's more protein has taken a new stage in that every packaged good, I feel like, is adding protein. So we're seeing, and everyone's talking about it too.
Yeah.
Major publications, one of your favorite YouTubers.
Yes, Drew Gooden. He did a video on it, got like 5 million views.
But people who like have never talked about nutrition before, have never talked about like snacks before.
Right.
It's just become this topic that's like, it feels trendy, but we'll come back to that word. It's just everywhere. Like it feels like protein is everywhere. Messaging around protein is everywhere.
And it is.
And it is. It feels like that because it is.
I mean, we're seeing it. It's not just for bodybuilders anymore. It's not just for people focusing on fitness. We're seeing it in cereal. We're seeing it in ice cream, popcorn, pretzels, donuts, candy, and even condiments.
Condiments. I was like, what are we missing? We're missing
condiments. It's in condiments. Sprinkles, you're right. Water,
seltzer.
Soda.
Alcoholic seltzer, actually. Saw that. I got a sample for a protein alcohol seltzer. I need to find what this was called.
Protein booze.
It was
feels
horrifying.
Illegal. That's crazy.
What was this called? Protocol.
Kind of a good name.
Protocol. Protocol. So like alcohol protein.
That's a great name.
It's a great name.
Great name.
The flavors were pineapple pump.
Again, good branding.
Swoleberry.
Swoleberry is fun.
I was like, this is the frattiest beverage I've ever encountered. So I refused to drink it.
Fair.
My friends and boyfriend did, and they said that it was like a milky White Claw, which nothing sounds more awful than a White Claw, except for a milky White Claw.
That is horrible.
So, needless to say, protein in everything.
Protein is in everything, and it's being noticed by more than just the industry. It's broken out of industry discussions. NPR is talking about it, PBS, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, all of these publications recently, within the past even couple of months, let alone past 2 years, have started to pen pieces basically saying, let's stop putting protein in everything, or there is protein in everything.
Yes.
And it's true. It's true. It's in a lot of things, but our main argument here is that it's not a new trend. In fact, it's been around for a long time, and it's not a bubble. Protein's not a bubble.
Yeah.
And look, yes, 71% of Americans are seeking more protein. Yes, it's more in this discourse, but it's bigger than just a trend.
Let's get into why.
Oh, hell yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting because protein is a trend in the sense that like putting like added protein and people caring about adding protein and tracking their protein is relatively new.
Yes.
But protein itself, I almost want to back up like even before we get into the history stuff.
Yeah.
Literally, what is protein? Because if we were talking earlier and I was like, I'm actually nervous that we're getting to a stage where people think that protein is just like something that you add as an ingredient to things.
Me.
As opposed to the like scientific definition at the molecular level, like proteins are huge molecules made up of amino acids. They literally make up like your whole body. They're essential for building and repairing tissues, but it's like your muscles, your skin, your organs. Like protein is everything in your body. Many enzymes and hormones are proteins. So when we're saying protein, we're not just talking about like whey isolates, like a protein that is an ingredient that you add to things. Like protein as a macronutrient can't possibly be a trend because it's our bodies, it's everything. But this like added protein conversation is more around there are 9 essential amino acids that you need to eat because your body doesn't make it. And that's where this like added protein conversation
Yeah.
kind of starts.
And that's really where we're focusing a little bit more, less on the science of it, despite being in an academic hall right now.
Despite being, yes. Yes.
Despite having a chalkboard behind us.
But yeah, tell me about like everything I just said. When was that discovered?
So this discussion of protein for muscle building and protein in products really began in earnest in the 19th century. 1838 is when 2 scientists identified and described and named protein. Protein does not show up until they name it in 1838.
Which is crazy because as I just said, literally building blocks
Right.
for life.
And look, the general concept of it from the food standpoint has existed. Dairy, meat, all that kind of stuff. But the concept of protein in your diet and understanding of it and the impact on your muscles really starts in this mid-19th century era. 4 years after this, another scientist who detailed the idea about protein being an important building block for muscle. And then when muscle breaks down, you need protein to replace it. That is like, this changed everything. The fact that like protein and exercise were associated. Like beyond, this is when this protein theory, also protein as food, started to come into play.
And critically like derived from plants because again, it's
Yes.
not, bodies can't make some of these like 9 essential amino acids. We need to eat it. And I also think that's kind of funny because people eat meat thinking that meat is the primary source, but it's actually the plants that the meat eat.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
But yeah, he, this guy, Justus von Liebig, he also wrote an influential book called Animal Chemistry, where he detailed his ideas about protein metabolism and the muscular exertion. When it breaks down the muscles, you need the protein to replace it. He's
our guy.
He's our guy.
Other gains.
Father of gains. And then still in the 19th century, another German physicist, all these were basically German physicists and nutritionists, not physicists, physiologists and nutritionists, named Carl von Voigt. He is one of the first scientists to establish the nutritional parameters for the amount of protein one needs to intake. He was basing this off of working class men, which makes sense. This is around the Industrial Revolution. People are in factories. People are doing a lot of these laborious, they're laboring. He determined that it was 118 grams of protein
Per day.
per day.
Per working man.
Working man.
Which is actually a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
And that was just minimum daily intake to like be able to work well.
Correct. Yeah.
So interesting. So thanks Voigt for
Thanks,
telling,
Voigt.
for basically, he was like almost the origin of like the nutrition label even, because this is like even just the concept of there are minimum daily values of different nutrients that you need
Right.
was, I guess, 19th century.
Some have called him the father of modern nutrition.
Thanks, my guy.
Thanks.
Super interesting.
But I think this era too, it's the Industrial Revolution. It's when packaged goods also are starting to come into play. So it's also when like obviously science is changing and we're able to do a lot more, which sort of leads us into like sort of this next wave of these first protein isolates.
Yes. Yeah, so this is super interesting. 1930s is really when this all starts. Soy protein is the first widely developed and used isolate. Isolate meaning that scientists were able to separate the soy protein from like the oil and the carbs. So you're not getting the fat and the carbs, you're just getting protein. They get protein by itself. And this also was news to me. It was mostly used in like industrial purposes as an adhesive, a coating in paper products. Henry Ford was a big user of soy plastics. I love when people are like, that ingredient is in yoga mats. And it's like half of what we eat is also in things that we use.
Yeah.
Because chemicals are in everything. Water is H2O, which is a chemical, whatever. I digress. But some of the most famous early use cases for isolates is World War II. There are meat rations. And in order to get meat to like go a longer way, basically, when it's being rationed, people put soy isolate in meat products or blended like soy isolate into meat products. And that, again, I want to get into this later, but it's so interesting how today we have a category called blended meat products, which is basically soy or mushroom and real meat, and how we think of that as such an innovation, but they were doing that in World War II. I feel like so many like food trends kind of started as a necessity from a war.
M&Ms came out of World War II.
Yeah.
Wars in general produce a lot of advancements, technological advancements, and of course it's going to come into food. And I really think like the need for non-perishable, easy access to nutrition and satiating things, and also at like a condensed scale.
Right.
It makes sense that like some of this stuff came out of this era that we now are using in like, you know, in this that we bought at CVS. Like, it's so interesting.
Yeah, with casein isolate in it.
Yeah.
Which is the next isolate that was developed.
It's so interesting.
Milk protein.
It's interesting that it was soy before milk, because we associate protein with whey.
Yes. But protein comes from plants originally.
So this is when we started hating plants.
Yeah, I guess
This is when vegans started to become bad.
That's a crazy day.
Well, tell me about milk protein.
Yeah, so milk protein was developed shortly after. Again, mostly used in like non-food applications at first, but then
Crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. Later used as a supplement. Early diet shakes, so like the Slim Fasts of the world, developed in the 1950s, used milk protein, but it's the same thing. So when you hear whey isolate or casein isolate, normally whey was like just a byproduct that they threw out after milk production, but this is saving the whey, and it removes the fat and carbs, and it's just pure protein. And I know you were researching Eugene Schiff.
Eugene Schiff is is a pharmacist. I feel like a lot of food products came out of pharmacies. Coke came out of a pharmacy way before this, but in the 30s, Eugene Schiff developed a method for processing whey from milk for human consumption. He started a company called Schiff Biofoods, which is still around, still making supplements. And this all leads us into post-World War II, 50s. This is the next like big jump in protein and protein products.
Yeah.
This is really where we see our modern version of protein products start.
And a huge reason for that is because this is when bodybuilding also took off. This was not a thing beforehand. And I assume that's because people were probably just muscular from doing their normal jobs.
The factories.
And as office jobs become a thing, people start lifting weights. I'm not going to get into the history of weightlifting. It's too big of a thing. But this is when bodybuilding is like really taking off.
And they start to become like celebrities too.
Yes, it's
is the other
aspirational.
thing. Yeah, and also in the 50s, there's urban sprawl, grocery stores start opening up, and they become bigger. The world of consumer packaged goods becomes a lot more vibrant and relevant, and people are aware of these things, which I think leads to the introduction of one of the first packaged protein products.
Yeah, I really like this story. So Bob Hoffman was this bodybuilder guy, super jacked, and he was originally anti-supplement. Like supplements were starting to be talked about here and there, and he was like, nah, I just want to like eat my food and work out. Paul Bragg, who is the Bragg's guy, if you've ever heard of Bragg's as like apple cider vinegar. So Bragg was a famous American nutritionist. Much later, I think he becomes kind of a divisive figure. Again, won't get into that. But he approaches Bob Hoffman and he's like, I think that weightlifting supplements are gonna be a thing, and you being a bodybuilder should be someone who makes it. And Bob Hoffman's a businessman, and he's like, why would I make protein bars when I could sell barbells, which last much longer? Fair point.
Technically, yes.
Fair point. But then this other guy, Irving Johnson, opens a gym in Chicago, and he starts training people. Part of his training plan is a diet of protein and cream. Ew.
Ugh.
And the results are wild. And he starts publishing the results in magazines. And Hoffman starts seeing what Johnson's doing, and he's like, maybe this guy is onto something. So he's like, wait, I should actually do this. he starts making his own protein supplements. And I love this detail. By standing over a fiber drum, stirring soy flour with a canoe paddle, and pouring it into melted Hershey's chocolate.
I'm sure at this time a whisk existed or like a food safe.
No. For the gains, he needed to use a canoe paddle.
It was a workout in and of itself.
That's the start of like a protein bar, basically, is this guy, Bob Hoffman, copying his friend who's opened this gym and is training people with added protein to their diet. And he's like, oh, I actually am going to take Paul Bragg's idea and turn this into a supplement. This becomes controversial later because this is also when anabolic steroids started to be used.
Hell yeah.
And a lot of the famous bodybuilders that Bob Hoffman coached, and then he was like, they're huge because I coached them and they used my protein bars, maybe were actually on steroids, which we learned later. We don't know. But he claimed his protein powder and canoe paddled protein bars, which we'll insert a picture of, caused like crazy gains.
Yeah.
And people believe it. I also love this detail. There was a standing joke in gyms across America that you could identify people who used Hoffman's supplements because you could smell them because of gas. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
boy.
Which people don't
Made them
digest
stinky.
way very well. So it does make sense. So the company closed, but that was the first protein bar and like real packaged.
He made cookies too.
He made high protein cookies.
For Lenny and Larry's.
Before Lenny and Larry's,
Lenny
maybe.
and Larry's.
Yeah. So then now we're into the 60s at this point.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
more fitness is coming onto the scene. People are starting to run for the first time, which is crazy. Like
I think that was a little earlier.
no,
Than
like
the 50s? That's crazy.
running as we know it today started around the 60s.
That's insane.
People were not running for pleasure. We're not running really for fitness before then.
They didn't have run clothes.
They were maybe like running away from like the enemy on the battlefield, but they weren't running in bandit running shorts and a Fiore top. Like that wasn't a thing yet.
They didn't have goose? Crazy.
I'll find the video and link it, but there's a video sort of describing how like the trend of running is
New.
relatively new in human history.
Insane.
Like running for the sake of the way we do it. The way you run around
Yeah.
a track, you run a couple miles in the morning. That's new. Also, gyms started opening up, and this sort of like boom of fitness, again, it started around the 50s and 60s, really started to pick up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. This is where the sort of fitness and bodybuilding culture and, as we wrote in our notes, the GNC boom
Yeah.
really started. And this will have an effect on the products that are being made because it's not
And marketed. Yeah.
and marketed because it's starting to become no longer just for bodybuilders or just for like high endurance athletes. More and more people are starting to get into the world of working out and fitness, and that's going to lead to more fitness oriented products around protein because this has already been established that protein and protein in this bar will help you gain muscle, be more fit.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it was gain muscle, be more fit, hitting 80s, 90s. It also starts to become more diet messaging, slimming. And there's like, I mean, all of these things happened at the same time because people weren't as worried about weight loss
Yeah.
before packaged food became a thing because it wasn't as much of a problem.
Also media.
Also media.
The visual media changed. We got TVs, we got color TVs. The visibility of these people, both from like the very jacked side and like the Gene Simmons jogging in place side, they come right into your home.
Yeah, so this era kind of transforms from just being bodybuilding, excess gains into like being in a deficit, into
Right.
slimming. So 80s, 90s, this is when protein powders, bars, shakes explode. And not as like a snack, the way we know it today,
Right.
more as like a meal replacement.
Right.
As like, if you want to be skinny, drink this Slim Fast shake.
Yeah.
That was one of
That's where
the big
programs
ones.
started to come into play.
Yep, absolutely. And a lot of the messaging was more around protein for satiety as opposed to protein for gains.
Yeah.
That messaging, I would argue, is really kind of what's leaked into today. Like that is the undertone of
Yeah.
marketing today, which we'll get into later too. But yeah, so that's like the Slim Fast. Power Bar was one of the first bars.
I miss Power Bar.
I miss Power Bar too.
I love the texture. For you and for the audience, the closest texture bar that I've found, the Dr. Smooth snack bar.
Oh, I've never had it.
Tastes the same. It's the same texture. It's that same like vaguely shiny bar, but also that like chew. It brought me back to that gold skinny Power Bar.
I love it. Yeah, Power Bar is one of the originals. At first had way more sugar than protein because again, these things were still being mostly developed for athletes.
Endurance athletes.
Endurance athletes, where you do need carbs. If you are a runner, if you are
Carbs
a
are
hiker,
energy.
you need carbs for energy.
Right.
So the protein was an added benefit, but they were energy bars. And I know we also mentioned like Cliff still is kind of higher sugar than protein. And that's because it's an energy bar, not a protein bar.
And Cliff they also eventually built Builder's Bar,
Yes.
which is their protein bar.
Yes, which is a better example of that. So all of these kind of start coming into play. So there's these, like, Cliff Bar is one of the OGs. Power Bar is another OG. There's one called Tiger's Milk at the time. And these bars become a thing. They don't taste great. People aren't obsessed with them. They're more for athletes. But there's also this, like, it's starting to leak in to just people who are concerned about diet generally.
Right.
And then the formats kind of start to change in the early 2000s thanks to diet culture also. So diets like the Atkins diet, which really emphasizes protein and fat a little bit, basically no carbs. Same with South Beach diet, paleo, keto, like these all start kind of coming onto the scene. Protein is the hero ingredient, framed more in a way of if you have more protein, you will be fuller, you will be leaner, not gaining muscle. It wasn't about gaining muscle, it was about being smaller. And these all really start to take off and kind of put protein in the spotlight as this hero ingredient. And then it's just in every format now, because if I can't have, you know, my candy bars, if I can't have my shakes, yogurts, whatever.
Ice creams.
So
many ice creams.
I want a different version of them that is high protein, lower sugar. So that starts to become a thing.
Some other things that happened in the 2000s was we started to see money moves. We started to see acquisitions and bigger players come into the scene and scoop some of these brands up. Nestle acquired Power Bar, which we were talking about earlier, for $375 million in 2000. Kraft paid around $300 million for Balance Bar, which is another protein bar that I used to consume a lot as a kid, buying from Trader Joe's, also in 2000. So these bigger players are starting to make some bets onto protein, and eventually we'll see significant more bets as we get into the 2010s and as we get into the 2020s. We see a lot more bets. But the 2000s was another big shift, both from the way it was marketed, the way people perceived it, but also the brands that were coming out. We get some iconic brands coming out in you know, the early to mid 2000s. Pure Protein.
Pure Protein.
Pure Protein's a big one. We got Pure Protein here. And those were offering a lot of like candy replacements.
Yeah, this one wasn't out then, but
that was not out then.
Sundae cone.
Yeah. And then we see a lot of these candy replacement flavors. Again, it started with Bob Hoffman, but like,
yeah, well, the real like one that first marketed itself not as like just a bar, but a literal candy bar that also has
like Hornbill's Chornbills.
Kind of. I mean, I would argue this is essentially, it was just marketing. The marketing was like candy bar on steroids. Was in 2002, and it was a brand called Detour, which was the first like honestly proof of concept that consumers didn't want like new forms of protein. They didn't want to have to like add powders to things. They wanted familiar forms, but better for you. So like they wanted candy.
Right.
And then, you know, something like Pure Protein goes from being a bar to more of a candy. Yeah. So all of these kind of started happening early 2000s, I would say.
Then we get some brands like Think Thin, now Think, which I had recently. They came out with minis, that were pretty decent. But again, I think the Think Thin plays specifically into this new trend in the early 2000s of thinking thin.
Thinking thin.
Literally in the name.
In the name. They're not trying to hide it.
And this is one of those brands to sort of start to introduce a lot more sugar alcohols to reduce the caloric numbers. and lower the sugar too, is when people
Right.
started thinking about sugar as an issue.
And like the protein calorie ratio.
This was like the height of a very explicit type of diet culture that like kicked off in the 90s.
Splenda culture, I would say.
Splenda culture. And I think this all culminated, I think, in two really iconic brands, and that's Quest and Halo Top.
Yeah. Oh, Quest and Halo Top are an era. Like I would almost call the early 2010s like the Quest and Halo Top era.
Yeah.
What they share in common is you can eat things you love without guilt. Their whole thing wasn't like eat this for bodybuilding. It was a picture of like a cheesecake, and they're like, but you can have it because
A decadent ass cheesecake.
yes. And now like that stuff is so normal. Like this pure protein bar has a sundae cone on it. This Mosh bar has pumpkin pie on it. This
Pure protein.
Clean Simple Eats protein
Simple Eats.
has ice cream on it, and this is a protein powder. Quest really was like, I feel like the first or one of the first
Yeah.
to market with that visual and become so successful. Like
So successful.
they blew up.
Oh my God.
And Halo Top also through that like new
Yeah.
format is really interesting.
Yeah, and Halo Top's interesting because they originally positioned themselves with the higher protein content and honestly a whole litany of other call-outs, and eventually it was really focused on true diet culture.
Guilt-free.
Eat the pint.
The whole pint.
It's 300 calories, eat the pint. Even though like it is kind of one of the OG protein ice creams. And now we have literally so many, but Halo Top was one of the original ones.
Yes.
And like that shifted a lot of things in the proteinization of foods. Quest, Halo Top, Lenny and Larry's, which also started in the 90s
Yes.
and got really big around the early 2000s as well.
Yeah, Lenny and Larry's was even before either of these.
1993,
actually,
very early.
which is really, they've been around for so long, actually.
And they're everywhere. I see them. They're at any checkout you go to. There's a Lenny and Larry's cookie.
Absolutely.
It has a lot of fiber.
It does have so much fiber. And we can tell that Lenny and Larry's was before Halo Top Quest era because it's still pretty high sugar. Well, the OG cookie was like
Yeah, now they have a
pretty
lot of
high
different
sugar,
versions.
high calorie, also high protein. But it was one of the first brands that was like, here's a cookie, we know you want a cookie, but we're adding protein, and that message of this isn't a diet food.
Yeah.
This is additive. You're adding something. And we're seeing so much of that now, and that's how diet culture
God.
is so well concealed in the protein guise, is because people are able to see it as like, oh, I'm not like restricting
Yeah.
anything, I'm just getting more protein. But that in itself is diet messaging.
It's this idea of permissible indulgence, even though I think sometimes these protein bars are not an indulgence.
No, OG Quest,
God, they're so
the texture
gross.
was so bad, and the aftertaste was so bad.
Yeah, but the world that we live in now of protein products and the proteinization of products and the expansion of categories. Yes, there's a lot more categories than there ever was, but the idea and the marketing and the positioning of a lot of these brands hasn't really changed as much from 2010s, but even the early 2000s. And I think the biggest, we haven't had another really big jump in protein products. We pretty much have been in a very similar boat almost the past 20 years. It's just we have more products, there is some more tech, and the positioning is slightly different. But we haven't had that big leap.
Well, what do you mean? Because I do feel like we have way more products with protein than ever before.
Sure, but I think these new products are slightly better. They lean a little bit more into the taste. But the jump from the 50s, where it's these bodybuilder products, to then the 80s and to the 90s, like that was huge.
Yeah.
Like this is just a natural next step from what we've
yeah.
had over the past 20 years.
Yeah, I would argue that the biggest difference, one, is that it's now in everything, which again we'll get
Yes.
to, and also messaging around the protein calorie ratio in particular, I think is a little bit new. Which is interesting because, again, I said, like, we've done such a good job of disguising protein as, like, this isn't diet culture.
Oh, we've done a great job
But
at it. It basically does not exist in the lexicon, even though it is just the same diet culture it's ever
Same
been.
thing. Because there's something.
It's all about getting skinny.
It's all about getting skinny.
Hasn't
But
changed.
it feels like a protein brownie. Sounds like, oh my god, I can have dessert and hit my macros. Like this idea feels not like deprivation, which is we have historically associated diet culture with deprivation. But just because it doesn't feel like deprivation doesn't mean it's not diet culture. I would argue it almost is worse diet culture because it's deceptive diet culture.
Yeah.
The issue being that it's not giving you all of the information. I mean, I suppose like protein, as we know from early days, all of the history we talked about, like it is the building blocks of life. We want protein. We want more protein. The average American probably doesn't need as much protein as we are saying that you do, because you need protein if you are lifting weights.
Yeah, you can't just not lift weights and eat a ton of protein. It's going to do nothing.
Well, it may even put you in a caloric surplus, which is not the goal of theoretical diet culture. I mean, that's not the goal that it's positioning itself. It's basically like you'll be more full, so you'll eat less, is the undertone of a lot of like protein products that started, I would say, like 2010s. I don't know. It's so much we can go down that hole of 2010s, but I do think there was basically the shift. Until the early 2000s, protein was like a diet tool, like a like nice tool to have to add as a supplement.
It was a supplement.
By like mid 2010s into 2020s, protein is like a wellness baseline. It's like anything you have can be upgraded.
Yes, we've moved beyond just supplements. Everything demands protein.
Yep, and you can cheat clean. Like you can eat the things you want.
Yeah.
In theory.
And I think this is why, like, again, you know, we talked about Nestle and Kraft making big. Like, this is why big bets are still being made and especially in the late 2010s, some big bets were made.
Yeah. Wait. What are those?
Kellogg's bought RxBar for $600 million in 2017, and now Peter Rahal, who's founded RxBar, is off doing another thing, which we will get to later. David Barr. Hershey's bought One, which is similar brand to Quest in terms of like candy and sweet and indulgent forward flavors and positioning. Hershey bought them for $400 million in 2019. Simply Good Foods Company, which acquired Quest, which we've talked about a lot, for $1 billion in 2019, and then later acquired Owen for $300 in 2024. Owen is more of a plant-based protein shake and supplement company. And then in the 2020s, I mean, so much, obviously.
In the 2020s,
we had a big
this
one.
is everything.
This is everything.
Everything takes off.
Kind,
which I still don't really associate with like protein.
I don't, but it fits into the bar category. Most of the bars are really associated with protein, but they sold for an ungodly amount. They sold for $5 billion.
It's insane. In 2020.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Cliff Bar is acquired by Mondelez, which owns
Oreo
for $3 billion. Magic Spoon, which another brand that we could probably have a whole podcast on, which really kicked off sort of this late 2010 to early 2020s trend of protein in other products. They're a protein cereal company with low sugar, nostalgic flavors. They've raised close to $90 million, which is crazy. It's a $10 box of cereal. David Barr, which at this current point of recording hasn't even been around for a year and has raised...
It hasn't been around for a year?
It has not been around for a year. I think it's been like 10 months maybe. They have raised $75 million. They've acquired a major supplier of a fat replacement, which gets them to a lower calorie standpoint. They're almost $1 billion of valuation and will hit $100 million in annual sales by the end of their first year.
And I mean, we could again go into David like forever and ever on its own podcast. But what's interesting to me that I want to bring up, like just in the context of what we've said so far about David, is it kind of says the quiet part out loud of their marketing. Literally, their tagline is increase muscle, decrease fat.
Yeah.
And that is diet culture. And
we've almost come full
unabashedly,
circle.
we've come full circle.
We've gone back
Because it was being disguised fairly well by Halo Top. It was like, eat ice cream, eat the whole pint. Not saying stuff like
Right.
burn fat. Like it was coded.
It was coded.
Now
We've just gone back.
we've gone totally back. We spoke to Peter Rahal, which we'll talk about more later, but he's also like, yeah, I built this company on weight loss.
Yeah.
Like that is what this company is about.
And I'm sure that was a big learning from our X bar and thinking about what to do post. And clearly the bar formats work. It clearly works for David. They're crushing
They're
it.
crushing it.
And I think the other thing too, that another thing that's really changed the game is this sort of protein to calorie ratio.
Yeah.
That he's betting big on, that has become a big shift in the discourse too. Is like, we want to be efficient.
We want the lowest calories possible with the highest protein. And that, I mean, that in itself is obviously like because of weight loss. Like, I mean, well, it's like about being in a calorie deficit, right?
Right.
And again, what's interesting to me there is, and what I feel like should be like, when we have this website that says increase muscle, decrease fat, there should be like an asterisk that's like,
If you work
if
out.
you work out, because you literally can't increase muscle just by intaking more protein.
Yes.
You need to resistance train on top of it.
Yeah.
And this marketing is so misleading. Like it should actually be required by the FDA to say that you can't just increase muscle by ingesting, why was that word so hard? Ingesting more protein. You need to work out, tear your muscles, and then more protein goes to those muscles and helps build them. If you're not resistance training and you're just having more protein, that's fine. Protein isn't bad for you by any means, but it's just additional calories. So you actually might be eating in a caloric surplus if you just add protein to your diet, don't resistance train, and don't change anything else, which is fine. But if your goal is weight loss, like David positions, it's misleading.
Yeah, it is. And the only place it's kind of not misleading, I guess, is if you're on a GLP-1 and you need to be in a calorie deficit. So a David bar is kind of well positioned for somebody taking a GLP-1 because there's high protein, low sugar, low calories, low fat.
Right.
And that's great for that kind of person. There'll be millions and millions of people using GLP-1 in the coming year. There already are, and there's going to be a lot more. But for a lot of people, though, you're spot on.
Yeah. Well, the reason specifically it's good for someone who's on a GLP-1 is it's more that when your appetite is being suppressed by these medications, you can lose muscle by just not eating enough food, period.
Right.
So it is good to have foods that are higher in protein, even if you're not resistance training on top of that, because you could lose muscle that you have. So this isn't, I mean, that is like
The other part of it.
an important piece of that. But GLP-1s are a huge piece in the protein boom as well, because of what I just said, because there is genuine fear from like even a medical perspective that people will lose muscle, which you need for longevity, is important for every reason. But then people associate GLP-1 usage with higher protein diet. And so they think higher protein diet equals I will be skinnier whether or not I'm on a GLP-1.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then it's just it's just diet culture.
Right. It's all diet culture.
So there's so much to be said. There's so much to be said. And now we're in a place where there are companies like David, all of these bars in existence. The bar aisle is changing constantly, but also every aisle is changing constantly. There's so much more, which is why we're going to do a protein part 2 episode, and we'll chat more about brands like David, our conversation with Peter.
Yeah.
There's just so much more to say.
Yeah, we have to break this up into another piece to talk a lot more about the current ecosystem of protein, where it's going, what these brands are doing, because some of these new brands like David could be a podcast in and of its own. It's made such waves, and it's exposed a lot of these trends that we've sort of dived into in this episode.
So much to say.
So much to say. We're gonna say more in the next episode, but definitely stay tuned.
Yeah, and if you listened to this and you were excited by sharing your own hot take, or if we like riled you up in some way, share with us because we can share it on the next episode.
Please email us or DM us on Instagram. We're at Express Checkout on Instagram. You can email us, nate@expresscheckout.co or jenna@expresscheckout.co. Please subscribe and leave a review of this podcast.
Yeah.
It helps us out greatly. And subscribe to our newsletter on Substack, talking about all the latest and greatest in CPG, consumer brands, retail, all the latest products.
Including all the protein stuff.
So many protein products.
Yep, and it'll keep coming because it's not a bubble.
Protein's not a bubble. Protein's not a trend.
Mic drop, shake
Mic
drop.
Shake drop. I'm still full. Bye.